practice that yields a fairly good crop no matter what the rainfall conditions. Too little rain, no problem. Too much, just fine. Untimely rain, also fine. Trust me, after 2 decades plus of agricultural reporting, I could not imagine such a thing. Because every season I was reporting on massive crop loss from climate change phenomena. Droughts, untimely rains, floods, storms, hail, cloudbursts, pest attacks due to erratic rain, you name it. And no one seemed to have a viable solution. Trust me, after 2 decades plus of agriculture reporting, I could not imagine such a thing. Because every season I was reporting on massive crop loss from climate change phenomena. Droughts, untimely rains, floods, storms, hail, cloudbursts, pest attacks due to erratic rain, you name it. And no one seemed to have a viable solution. And then I came across just such a practice. Nothing fancy, no rocket science. Just a forgotten practice being kept alive by maybe a few thousand Adivasis. Mix shifting cultivation. One of the most ancient agriculture practices in India, maybe the world. I studied the practice with two indigenous tribes, the Baigas of the Maikal Hills in Madhya Pradesh, who call it Bevar, and the Madhyas of the Bhamraghar Hills in Maharashtra, who call it Penda. So, what is different that makes this practice erratic rainfall proof? First, the crop is a mixture of 6 to 8 millets plus legumes, oilseeds, gourds and beans. And each one's rainfall requirement is different. So, in less rain, ragi and sorghum flourish. In medium rain, kodo thrives. And in heavy rain, kutki shines. You get to harvest a decent crop no matter what. The mixed cropping also controls pests. Second, cultivation is done on hill slopes, so no waterlogging due to excess rain. Third, no tilling is involved. So if there are sudden heavy rains, those are growing more and more common as the crisis deepens, by the way. Topsoil does not wash off as it does on tilled land. A Baiga indigenous farmer, Lamtibai Rathuria, explained to me clearly how a Bevar crop compares with paddy, the main conventional crop in the region. In too little rain, the paddy wilts, she said, but Bevar gives a moderate yield. In excess rain, paddy gets pest, but Bevar gives a bumper yield. If it rains at harvest time, water collects in the paddies and the crop rots. But since Bevar plots are on slopes, the water just drains off. Simple, isn't it? And how does the shifting work? Each family has 3 small plots, none more than 3 acres, in different parts of the forest. Every 3 years, they shift to a fresh plot. The small bushes and saplings that have grown on the fallow plot are cut down and burnt, and mixed seeds are sown in the fertile layer of ash. Once the crops are harvested, the land is left to rejuvenate till next year. Each plot of land gets 6 years of rest after 3 years of crops, and the rich forest ecology restores fertility fast. And did you think climate resilience is the only plus point of this practice? Goodness, no! Its yields are impressive. A family of 6 can be satisfactorily fed and even saved for a lean year from just 2 acres of land, single crop. And rocky, so-called inferior land works just fine. Labor required is 75 to 80% less than conventional farming. I saw an elderly lady in her 70s cultivating 1 acre single-handedly with a few small tools. Seeds and fertilizers are generated on the farm, so no animal input is required, 0 cultivation costs, no loans, no suicide. The produce is varied and nutritious, so fewer health costs. Plus, crops like kodo and kutpi can be stored for 50 and 100 years respectively. So bumper yields of good years act as a food safety net for lean ones. There is just one circumstance under which a crop can be lost. If there is very heavy rain at the beginning of the season, before the plants have taken root, the crop may be washed out. But this is far lower risk compared to conventional farming. Practitioners say that they find this practice way more food secure of the two. And how do you think we ended up nearly losing this wonderful practice? Well, it was banned by the British under the Indian Forest Act of 1927 as harmful. It was given misleading names like slash and burn that conjure up frightening images of huge tracts of forest being burnt down. But in actual practice, farmers don't fell standing forest. It is just too much work. The shifting only happens between designated plots which are really small. No family has more than 9 acres of holdings in all, and with population statistics, that would add up to a teeny part of the total forest area. I met many families who had given up the practice for fear of the law after it was banned, but went back to it, and many more who want to, simply because it works. So, how do we harness the benefits of this wonderful practice for the future? The quickest way is to provide protective legislation to make it safe for Adivasis to return to it. Practice continues, practitioners are food secure, knowledge remains live. Next is systematic research. Like many banned practices, Beaver or Penda was never studied properly. We could start with basic research like how many tribes in India have similar practices, the land and population involved, the fine points of practice, and so on. With sufficient research, it should also at some point be feasible to scale the practice up. And here I wish to point out that many more wise indigenous practices are also on the verge of dying out. The Solika tribe in Karnataka have a forest fire practice which regenerates forests faster. There are thousands of forest foods known to indigenous people which might help reduce dependence on ecologically expensive cultivated food. Along the Karnataka coast, farmers have been cultivating saltwater rice, which could be invaluable in case of sea level rise. These are just a few out of maybe hundreds of forgotten indigenous practices that may have a key to our modern world crisis. And even though climate change may be the single most terrifying crisis humanity has faced so far, quite a few solutions may actually be right in our backyards. All we have to do is to listen to the wisdom of the humble ancient people. They have lived with the elements way longer than us. And if we let them, they can guide us back to that place of safety, abundance, and alignment where nature's upheavals don't throw us into chaos.